can you tell us a little bit about that and about your journey to where you are today?
I didn't plan my life. I never planned to be a doctor. And I can remember the moment in high school, which was probably like grade 11, where I said, I don't need sciences anymore. Like, I'm done with that. I'm going to be like an activist. I'm going to do artsy stuff. Like, I'm done. I don't need it anymore. So really it was the one thing led to another. So I started out doing an undergrad in philosophy and women's studies, which sounds like completely like what a terrible way to get a job. Like that is not, those are not usable skills. I actually really loved women's studies in particular, but it set the stage for a lens on life and what was interesting to me. And I did a lot of work around poverty and injustice and girls and women. And it really introduced me to this idea of things that need to change in the world and building community with other women to make that happen. Then I went on to run an outreach program for street prostitutes in Halifax, which was an incredible opportunity. It was such a learning experience. It was very humbling to learn from these women. We hired a lot of women who had worked as street prostitutes, then joined our organization and worked for us. I learned so much from them. And always really to be honest and vulnerable and tell the truth. Tell the truth about what you know and tell the truth about what you don't know, because there were so many skills they had that I didn't have. Like we had a lot to teach each other. I then did a master's in social work, and I got really interested in girls and women who cut themselves. And my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time. We drove to Boston for a wedding, and he said, I think you should go to Harvard. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Like it was like a road trip. And he's like, no, I think you should. You should do a PhD. And I said, I can't do that. And he said, yes, you can. And we parked the car, and Harvard has all kinds of different schools. Like they have a school of education, a medical school, a school of public health, a law school, all that, and undergrad. And they're in different parts of the city. And we just happened to pull up outside this library. We had no idea. We went into the library and we started to look at the catalog, the course catalog. And I realized that all the thinkers that I had been studying in my master's of social work were actually at Harvard Graduate School of Education.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. Like I had never made that connection. So I thought about it, and I thought more and more, and they will let you just come. I contacted the school. They will let you just come and attend courses, like for a day, like to just sit in.
Right.
And I sent some emails. I said, this is what I want to do. Like, would you meet with me? One person met with me. I attended a day of classes, and then I went, and I couldn't believe I got in, but I did, and I loved it. And then in my work with girls who cut themselves, I asked every single one of them in my research, I said, where did you first go for help? And all of them said their family doctors. Now, they didn't often get the help they had hoped for from their family doctors, but what it said to me is my angle into mental health and community was really from a community perspective or from a developmental psychologist or a social worker. And that is still very stigmatizing. More so then, we're getting better. But for many people, they don't want to go see a social worker. Like it has some negative connotations. Absolutely. Even though social workers do some incredibly important work, it still has negative connotations. And then we're sort of really far along in the process. By the time someone thinks maybe I need to see a psychologist or a social worker, we're sort of far along in them struggling. I thought, what about if I'm a family doctor? I can do that biopsychosocial piece, and I get to do some of the stuff that's really great, like wellness visits, developing a relationship with people so that you really know them and you can walk beside them. That just seemed incredible. And then my husband again said, you should go. He'd been pushing the med school thing. I'm like, why are you pushing the med school thing? He's not a doctor. I didn't have the science background. I'm like, I'm going to have to go back to high school. Like, I don't know if I can do that. And he said, I know a school you can apply to. because his mom had been a nurse and had then went on to be an associate dean of a medical school with a nursing background and as a woman, which is really incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he knew about this program called MAC. He said, no, at MAC, they'll take students like you. I said, oh, I don't know. I said, I can't write the MCAT. He said, you don't have to write the MCAT. And I said, well, that's good. So I went and I spent a day at MAC and I thought, I'm going to give it everything I've got. I'll apply to one program. It's one shot. And if I get in, I'll go. And if I don't, then I'm going to be a developmental psychologist. And I got in. So I went and I was married. I commuted and I commuted with this fantastic guy. When he started, he was in his early 40s and he had been a lawyer and decided he was going to go back and be a family doctor. And we commuted back and forth from Toronto, and I really hated medical school, but I knew it would all be worth it. I love being a family doctor, but it took me a while. There was a lot of catch up. I had a lot of catch up to do in my first year of university. Like that was a nightmare. Like I was looking up online, like biology textbooks.
Right.
Like I was like, what is a cell? People are like talking about all this, like assuming this knowledge. And I'm like, I don't know what a cell is.
God. And wait.
I truly don't.
Do you have children at this point?
I got pregnant my last year of medical school.
Okay.
And I don't think there's very, very many people that can have. I got pregnant and then I had my first child in residency. I ended up having 2 children in residency. I'm not sure that they were thrilled about that, but I'm like, I'm getting old. I really want kids. I better get on this.
Wow.
And I got very lucky. I had my second child 2 weeks before finishing my residency. And they're like, you don't have to come back. Well, just like, you're good. You don't have to come back and do the rest of it. But I got a mat leave. I'm like, no, I'm coming back. I'm coming back to finish my 2 weeks. Because as a physician, you don't really get a maternity leave. So I'm like, I need to take advantage of a maternity leave. It might be my last one.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't even. So you're already getting no sleep in residency. And then you've got 2 little boys.
Some newborns to add into the mix. Oh my God. You're incredible. That's incredible.
Being up with kids, and my kids I've never had a good sleeper in my life until they became teenagers. But that was, when you're woken up through the night in the hospital in residency, your heart is just pounding. You're like, I hope I don't kill someone. I hope I don't hurt anybody. I hope I'm really helpful tonight. So when I had children, I'm like, I can nurse. I can change diapers. Like,
this is easy.
Right.
Nobody is going to die on my watch at home tonight.
Perspective is
so important. It felt like
a
relief, to be honest.
Wow. Okay. So there's the trick for newborn sleeplessness. Do residency first and then cakewalk. Amazing.
Exactly. It worked.
Super impressive. And we're delighted now that you have taken a special interest in all things menopause. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you've developed that interest or where that interest started.
When I started my family practice, I really loved pediatrics. So I saw a lot of young babies, a lot of newborns, and I saw a lot of women who were just wanting to have their first baby, or they came to me when they were pregnant. So really, my patients and I aged into perimenopause and menopause together, and it became so clear that I didn't have as many skills as I needed to really be agile and address menopause in a way that I wanted to be able to address it, even though I had been going to conferences. Like there's some annual conferences in Toronto. I think I was at the first one. We're at like the 20-year anniversary now. I had started as a resident. But I really realized that's not enough. Like prescribing hormones is more complicated. It's more nuanced. The context has been very politicized. It's really scared women and healthcare providers. And I didn't have the training to do what I wanted to do in a way which I thought was wholesome care. And I was also having my own symptoms. And really very shocked to recognize as a physician that it took me several years to fit those puzzle pieces together. I think if you have, for a lot of women, if you have an obvious symptom, like suddenly you're drenched in a hot flash and you're like sweating and you've had changes in your periods, then you can pull those pieces together. But there's over 30 symptoms of menopause, and many of us may be having the symptoms that are less well known. So I didn't have like a hot flash. I had sleep disturbance, but I had many reasons to have sleep disturbance, as we've just talked about over the whole course of my life. It got worse. Suddenly I was dizzy. Like I was going to see the physiotherapist to get some vestibular help. And I was doing all these exercises trying to make it better. I had all kinds of kind of vague symptoms, and it took me a long time to pull those together and be like, oh, actually, maybe this is perimenopause. And if I'm having that trouble as a physician who sees women every day, like, what is this like for most of us?
Did you have someone to help you through that bit of journey, like help you put those pieces together? Or were you just did you just wake up one morning and kind of go, oh, like who did you go to?
Truly, it was in retrospect that I put those pieces together. It took me several years to figure that out. I mean, my life is busy. I have a lot of responsibilities, so I just kept going. And what you learn in your training as a doctor is just keep going. Like being able
You're
to
training
operate
as
on,
a woman, right? Like
yeah,
what women learn.
yeah. It's like being able to operate on like little sleep, multiple tasks that are distracting you. Like suck it up and keep going. And I think I really bought into that to my detriment.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time to figure it out, and it was only as I became better at managing menopause for my patients that I really pulled all the pieces together for myself. To be honest, it was not a straightforward path for me.
Yeah, it wasn't for us either, which is why we're interviewing you today, right? We really struggled, and when we did finally figure out, oh, this is perimenopause, then we couldn't find anybody to help us. And so that's the crux. So wanted to talk to you for many reasons today, but the crux of it is, how our listeners who maybe are on the path toward perimenopause, or maybe struggling now and they're not quite sure what to do, how can they create their own perimenopausal care plan? Because as you said, if you couldn't figure this out, Sarah, right? What hope do the rest of us have? And maybe we could start with why it is so challenging for perimenopausal women to get the care and support they need for their menopausal journeys, what some of the things are that have contributed to that. Because I think sometimes that understanding helps people get to where they need to advocate for what they should be getting.
I think there are many reasons, and I think it's really hard to advocate for yourself when you're in the patient role. And I think as girls and women, we are taught to be good girls, don't kick up a stink. And that is valued and rewarded socially in our culture, is you just go along with it. Yeah. So many reasons. So I think we do not value aging women in our culture. And that's a problem. The whole history of medicine is literally built on the male body. So we've tested medications on men, not on women. We just simply don't have the same level of research on women's bodies as we do on men. We don't teach doctors to know women's anatomy and physiology and menopause, and we don't teach women to know their own bodies. So they don't know their own anatomy. They don't know when there are changes. Often we haven't, for example, taught women to take a mirror. When we do, I really think we need to do this more often in medical practice, is actually have a mirror when we're doing pelvic exams and walk women through what we're looking for so that they can recognize changes. Cool. It's in the same way that we say to people, oh, how would you be looking out for skin cancer? These are like the ABCDEs of skin cancer if your mole changes. But if we don't actually talk to women about their genitals and take them through what are their different parts of their anatomy, have proper language, talk about changes, what's normal, what's not normal, then why would they know to come and talk to us? And I think that's gotten even harder through COVID, that
Mm-hmm.
we've had multiple years where we were relying on virtual visits.
Yeah.
And women and men were doing a lot more self-diagnosing. So I think that's a part of it. The training in medical school, I got an hour, and
Oh
this
my
was
God.
around 2002. And they said it was when the Women's Health Initiative came out, and they said, take women off hormones. And I really felt like to be a good doctor, it was to take women off hormones. And then the pendulum never swung back so that we actually have really good education in medical schools or mandatory curriculum. I mean, I have never I've never had a colleague who tells me they had really good training in menopause during medical school or residency. And that's for family doctors, but also for gynecologists. They will tell you the same thing, is they've never had the opportunity. You have to be incredibly passionate and proactive to go out and get that additional education. And for most people, what this means is this is after you've graduated. Usually it's women who are interested in doing this, women who are then trying to repay medical school loans. They may have a family of their own. So they're doing double duty they have got a double job at home and in the workplace. And then they have to take off time to pay for more education or they're still paying off their medical school debt. I mean, that's a lot of barriers. You have to
Yeah.
be pretty motivated to want to do that. This
Mm-hmm.
really needs to be a mandatory part of our curriculum, available for all medical students and residents. And I also think we need to have opportunities for practicing physicians. Like, we have to have days where you don't have to pay multiple hundreds of dollars to come and get a day on giving menopause care.
Yeah.
So it's very challenging.
Yeah. And also, like, so if it's you're you've had to jump through all these hurdles to get to this knowledge that you have. The chances of women like myself going in and finding a doctor who's managed to get through all those hurdles, to have the education that they need to support me, it's kind of impossible. Not impossible, but it doesn't exist, I find. And we're struggling. A lot of women that I talk to are dismissed, and
Yes.
it's I don't know, it's challenging. So how do we as women, what do we ask for? How do we get the care that we need if our doctors don't even have the knowledge?
I love the list that you developed. And when I read that list, like I think it's called the 10
The 10 steps.
tips,
Oh, thank you.
it's actually like you read my mind. I think they're incredibly important. They're straightforward, but they really do make a difference. So if you have a family doctor yet that you like, even if you're not sure if they're really trained on menopause, I would still say, like, treasure that relationship, keep that person, because that person's really important. Maybe they can refer you out. Maybe you need to see someone specific for the menopause care. But hold on to that person that you have a long-term relationship with, because there's nothing that can take the place of that long-term relationship. When someone's known you, they know your family history, they know the people in your life, they have a sense of what may have been challenges or what are strengths of yours, but they may still be able to do the menopause care. So I think those simple steps of, like, make that your one and only priority for an appointment. Like, if you have to have, like, forms filled out for camp, or you're like, can I just refill this prescription? There's such limited time in our medical system that any kind of distractions are really not going to serve you well as a patient, and it's going to make it more challenging for the physician. So make an appointment. It's only to discuss menopause issues, like whatever your concerns are. Tell the receptionist what you're booking for. Sometimes people tell you, sometimes they don't because they're concerned about privacy, which is fair. Like, that's absolutely legitimate to be concerned about that. But oftentimes doctors will see, and they'll even take 5 or 10 minutes to review before they see the patient. And that's really helpful. That's really, even 5 or 10 minutes can be incredibly valuable. Think about what you want to discuss and what your hope is. So sometimes people come in and it's really broad. So is your hope that, do you just want someone to confirm? Like, sometimes you're like, I just want to understand,
I
like,
just want
is
to
this
know.
perimenopause? You don't actually need to do anything for me today. I'm not ready to start treatment. If you could just tell me, like, I'm not crazy and this all fits, with perimenopause, that can actually be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Is your goal to, like, someone talk you through the medications? Is your goal to be referred to a gynecologist? Are you worried because you're having abnormal bleeding that this is cancer? Like, if you can be clear about, like, what are your top two questions about what is your hope? What do you hope to get out of that? I think doctors really do. They want you to leave that appointment feeling cared for.